So you see, it was just an unfortunate accident. But of course what happened is, like all lies, you know, when you tell a lie, it doesn't take very long for that lie to be found out. So what you've got to do is you've got to come up with an even bigger lie to cover that lie, and so it goes on. And the problem was that there were obviously only a few people in the White House who were privy to the whole script. So everybody else was winging it. So the stories were getting more and more outrageous to cover up the lies. And it was starting to look pretty serious. So now they needed something even bigger to get this off of the front pages. And you know what that was? That event happened on the Sunday. The following day, the Monday, America was ostensibly bankrupt. For the 11th time, it was about to break through its pre-agreed ceiling with the Federal Reserve. The borrowing was about to break through the $14.2 trillion mark. And so the headline on the Monday either should have been still dealing with this thing, or the headline should have been America bankrupt. IMF called in. Except we had this. Now, he was the easiest guy in the world to set up because his feral sexual behaviour was well known. I mean, Sarkozy had even warned you about it. Sarkozy had warned him that if he moved to New York, he'd have to basically restrain himself because he wasn't going to get away with the sort of behaviour that he got used to in France, in the US. But, you know, these guys, it's habitual. And ironically, 2 weeks before this event, he actually gave an interview to Libération, the French newspaper, and in that interview he said he could quite foresee a situation where somebody was paid between 500,000 and €1 million to set him up on a rape charge. How prescient is that? So this was what dominated the US media on the Monday. The guy was arrested, obviously, while trying to get on the plane. And so he's taken back, he's interviewed, basically taken straight to court, which is the way it tends to operate in the US. He's taken straight to court, and the judge had a real sense of humour. Because the judge gave him bail. Bail was set at 6 million, I think it was. 6 million. And in addition, he had to live in an apartment block which had CCTV on all the entrances and exits, and if it didn't, then he had to pay for it to be installed. He had to pay for a private security company to monitor all the entrances and exits. He had to wear the security tag. All this is part of his bail conditions, but the final part of his bail conditions was that he had to live with his wife. And I think, I mean, just, God forbid, putting myself in that situation, I think that if I'd have been applying for bail, and the judge had said, blah, 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 but you've got to live with your wife, I think I'd have said, excuse me, can I go back to jail? I don't think I'd have wanted to be anywhere near my wife at that point. So, of course, what this is the clear battle between the Federal Reserve and the IMF. The Federal Reserve is in no way going to allow the IMF into the US. The Federal Reserve has a 100-year contract with the US government. That was the contract signed by Woodrow Wilson in 1913. That 100-year contract obviously is coming up to a close. Couldn't make this up. That contract, which was signed on December the 22nd, 1913, that contract expires at midnight on December the 21st, 2012. And one of the reasons we're seeing this global meltdown right now is because they're desperate to try and establish a new economy. And of course the Federal Reserve wants to try and make sure it pretty much owns everything it possibly can within the US by that time, so that the US government can't do without it. Meanwhile, the IMF, of course, is effectively doing the same thing with the rest of the world. So we've got this battle going on, this battle royal between the Federal Reserve, who are desperate to keep the petrodollar as the global reserve currency, and the IMF. And that's why we're going to see a lot of very interesting stuff going on over the next few years, of course including the crash of fiat currencies. I mean, it's already crashing. The vast majority of people don't realise it, but the value of fiat currency is falling at a phenomenal rate of knots. The purchasing power of fake money, paper money, is falling at a phenomenal rate. And it doesn't matter what currency it is, whether it's the dollar, the euro or sterling, the purchasing power of that fiat money is dropping like a stone. How long the Eurozone can last? Well, it should have fallen apart 2 years ago. Iceland set the template. I mean, Greece has been a basket case. Greece has basically been in a state of civil war for 2.5 years now. The only reason that the protesters in Greece don't get the benefit of a kinetic humanitarian intervention is because the Rothschilds already own the Greek central bank. Where you get a kinetic humanitarian intervention is where the Rothschilds don't own the central bank, but want to. And the reason that they went into Libya was not just because of the oil, it was a big part of it. It wasn't primarily because of the oil, it was primarily because Gaddafi was about to demand payment for his oil in gold, and he was about to set up an independent Arab-African economic union based on the gold dinar. On January the 4th of this year, the UN were about to release an independent report on Libya that praised Gaddafi as a model Arab-African leader. You can still find that report as a PDF document. But of course all of this is forgotten because they paint him as the mad dog. I'm not suggesting for one moment he was a saint, but was Blair, or Bush, or Cameron. By comparison, these guys were pretty saintly. So that's the reason Gaddafi had to be taken out. So you don't have to look too far. I mean, all of the countries that were demonised, and the few that remain demonised as the axis of evil, they all have one thing in common, and that is they are free of debt from the world. That's why Venezuela is probably next on the list, and that probably will happen sometime next year. So, money in the bank. There's a slide here somewhere. Money in the bank, let's go back. It's doing nothing, it's just losing its value. So you've got to do something smart with it. And what you certainly need to be looking at is what's going on here. 10-year gold. In fact, this is 2 months old, this slide. I haven't taken the print for 2 months. Gold today is around about $1,900. $1,900, just under £1,200. 10 years ago, when Gordon Brown sold 415 tons of Britain's 715 tons of gold, Gordon Brown sold 415 tons of gold at $250 an ounce. He was instructed to sell it by the Rothschilds to, who was it? Oh, the Rothschilds. That's the Rothschilds. How could they have ever known? How could they have ever known that, selling the gold to them at that point, they were going to make out like bandits as gold ramped up? I mean, literally, to put it in perspective, since November of 2008, in November 2008, gold was $775 an ounce. 775, now it's 1900. This is the clue. This is the clue that all of the players in the financial markets know what's going on. And they're moving into gold, into silver, into some other commodities as well. But primarily, gold and silver are certainly the easiest to work with. What's also coming? Well, it's already coming. Is the food shortages. Food prices are already ramping up at quite a phenomenal rate of knots. And I've been encouraging people for the last couple of years to start stocking up on food and water. No panic, no need to panic buy. But every time you go to the store, you buy one, get one free, buy one, stick one in the cupboard, It doesn't take too long. So you need to think about having probably 90 days worth of food supply for yourself and your family and water, of course. Food and water are going to be the critical elements here, because in the event, and I hope to God I'm wrong, but in the event of the complete breakdown, you know, there may be a period, however long that period is, it might be a few days, it might be a few weeks, but there may be a period when you just want to shut your door, pull the blinds, and hunker down. Because the craziness, because the people who have no idea this is coming, you know, they'll have no option but basically hit the streets because they won't know how else to deal with it. And the inner cities are going to perhaps be a bit of a zoo. I mean, I've not only got a stock of food, I've got a bow and arrow. Food and water, and a bow and arrow. And I live on a hilltop. I've got a good view all around. But even if I'm wrong, like I say, I hope to God I am. Stocking up on food now is a good hedge because the food prices are going to ramp up. I mean, just look at what's been going on in places like Australia, in the US. You know, the weather this year, artificial or otherwise, the weather has been an absolute mess. And the US food production is way down on what it normally is. So we may see ramp-ups in food prices maybe as soon as October, November. But if you've got a bit of a stock, then you can certainly alleviate the impact of that on your monthly food bill by maybe supplementing it from your stockpile. The priorities obviously are food and water first. Priorities are water and food. So in addition to thinking about your water, think about as well getting a filter. You know, think about getting something like the Berkey filter, which, you know, I mean, it's a little expensive. I mean, we're talking in the sort of low hundreds as opposed to a few pounds. But the beauty of a Berkey is that you can pretty much pour almost anything in the top, and you know what comes out the bottom is drinkable. So just give this some thought. I mean, it's like where we're at right now, the unexpected is likely to fall upon us. And it would be remiss of us not to think about having that protection. And we haven't got the protection like the Icelandic nation. We haven't got the protection of a government that says no one's going to lose their house, no one's going to starve. So we've actually got to take some initiative ourselves to avoid getting caught in the worst of what's coming. Now, let me just show you something here. Do you recognise this guy? Ron Paul. So is it possible, sorry, man, is it possible to get these lights out again? Hello? Hello, excuse me? On the bar? Is it possible to get the lights out on the very front? No? Yeah? Thanks, sorry. Sorry. Just the lights on the front of the screen here again. Do you remember which switch it is? Thank you. This is Ron Paul. Of course, his hat's in the rings for the presidential race next year, although you'd never believe that from the US media or the British media. You know, they just try and ignore the guy completely. The reason being is because he seems to understand what people want. And he's talking about shutting down the Fed. He's talking about the US issuing its own currency, which is a dangerous game because every other president who's tried to do that has ended up with a bullet. So, you know, Ron Paul is a brave guy. But I just want to show you this short clip of Ron Paul having a discussion with Ben Bernanke. Right? Ben Bernanke is the head of the Federal Reserve. The only thing that Ben Bernanke seems to know how to do is keep printing money, which is great for the Federal Reserve because everything that gets printed, of course, somebody owes interest on it. Same here, by the way. I mean, every pound that you've got in your pocket, somebody somewhere owes interest on that. There's not a single pound in circulation that is interest-free. All issued as debt. Well, here's Ron Paul having a discussion with Ben Bernanke about gold. And what's this? Only very short.
Very quickly, if you could answer another question, because I'm curious about this. You know, the price of gold today is $1,580. The dollar during these last 3 years was devalued almost 50%. When you wake up in the morning, do you care about the price of gold?
Well, I pay attention to the price of gold, but I think it reflects a lot of things. It reflects global uncertainties. I think the reason people hold gold is as a protection against what we call tail risk, really, really bad outcomes. And to the extent that the last few years have made people more worried about the potential of a major crisis, then they have gold